So I feel like a lot of artists play it safe nowadays. And then there are artists that feel like they were science experiments almost. That's Genesis Owusu. So Genesis Owusu, he's a guy that can go from screaming over punk guitars, and then the next song he is very melodical, and then to introspective rap songs about identity, isolation, and self-destruction. And it all sounds very cohesive. But what makes Genesis Owusu interesting isn't just the music, it's the fact that his entire career feels like someone trying to understand where they belong in a world that constantly tries to put them into boxes. And honestly, the deeper I got into researching him, the more I realized that this dude's story is way more interesting than most people know. So I did something that I didn't expect to happen. I actually interviewed Genesis himself for this video. I have the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Mr. Genesis Owusu. How are you doing, man?
Chilling, man, chilling. It's a sunny day today.
It's a sunny day, I can see that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're chilling. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. It's just crazy that this is happening right now. Just want to say thank you for getting on here with me. And after talking to him directly about his upbringing, his inspirations, racism, identity, making his albums, and the struggles of building his career, I realized his music makes way more sense once you understand where he came from. So, I welcome you, the entire history of Genesis Owusu, I guess.
Drive slow, homie. Drive slow, homie. Crack the window, show these niggas all you go, homie. Drive slow, homie. Drive slow, homie. Crack the window, show these niggas all you go, homie. Yo, my teacher told me plan your future days and be realistic, cause ain't no...
So Genesis Owusu was born Kofi Owusu Ansah in Ghana before moving to Australia when he was still very young. I know that your last name is Owusu, correct? So, your name is Genesis Owusu. What made you say like, okay, I want to put my last name and then I want to put Genesis in front of that?
When I first started making music, it was just under Genesis. And Genesis came about when I was still in primary school. My full name is Kofi Boateng Owusu Ansah. My first name is Kofi, but back in primary school, everyone used to pronounce it like coffee, like the drink. I caught the same bus as my brother, and he was a lot older, and his friends were like, oh, what's your brother's name? And he said Coffee, because that's how everyone pronounced it at the time. And they didn't believe him. They're like, what do you mean his name's Coffee? He's like, that's not his name. And they kept badgering him. And apparently Genesis was the first name that came to his head. And he said, his name's Genesis, just to like get them off his back. And that kind of stuck.
And growing up in the capital city of Australia, Canberra, made him feel different. Because when people think of Australia, they usually imagine beaches, barbecues, and kangaroos. And spiders that look like they came out of hell. So it's not exactly the first place people think of when imagining one of the more creative artists in modern music. But for Genesis, that environment was what shaped everything for him, especially because he grew up as a black kid in a predominantly white country, and this becomes a major theme throughout his music later. In his music, he explains identity, alienation, feeling misunderstood, and resisting labels, because those aren't just abstract themes for him. That's literally how he grew up. But music became the thing that helped him figure himself out.
Mainly my first influences were based in hip hop, mainly because Australia is a very white place. And growing up here as a black person, I didn't get to hear many other black stories. So when I started listening to hip hop, I resonated with the stories that they were able to tell, because I felt like I'd gone through similar life experiences. So I started delving into hip hop a lot more.
And one thing that's really important about Genesis Owusu is that his influences were never narrow. You can hear hip hop, funk, punk, soul, electronic music, and even indie rock all over his music. It's almost like you're in a character customization screen and you are able to pick what genre you want to mix into your music. Genesis Owusu has 10 on every single genre. And that came from growing up listening to artists who completely ignored expectations. Here are some of his influences.
I have an older brother. He was into like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Nirvana and Rage Against the Machine. And then my mom was the leader of her church's gospel choir, so she'd just be listening to gospel music. My dad really liked just anything with a cool album cover, so he'd buy a bunch of different albums and just be spinning music all throughout the house. And we all moved from Ghana, so there was a lot of Ghanaian high life music. Basically, there was just music, all different kinds of music coming from all angles, and I was the youngest in the house, so I was kind of the converging point for all of it.
As you can see, a lot of these artists were not afraid to be weird. And that's important because Genesis didn't just want to rap well, he wanted to create worlds, which became very obvious later in his career. So like most artists, his early music wasn't instantly massive. And honestly, that's probably a good thing because you can hear him slowly figuring out his sound, his voice, and his confidence.
How old were you when you first started making music?
I started making music when I was in like really early high school, like year 7. So I would have been like 12, 13. I was writing at the time, like I was writing short stories and I was writing like poetry and stuff like that. And he had just gotten into hip hop from rock. So he saw like how the poetry could go into the hip hop. So he was like badgering me, like really trying to get me to start music, and I just didn't want to do it. And he produced me a bunch of beats and put them on a little MP3 player. And one day I was listening to the MP3 player. I was in a public bathroom and I was listening to the MP3 player, and one of his beats came up on shuffle. And I wrote my first verse in a public bathroom, and that's how I started making music.
He released an EP when he was 17 years old, Car Drive EP. But at this point, he was still evolving, still experimenting, still trying to understand what kind of artist he actually wants to become.
How the Car Drive EP actually happened was I had a dream. I had a dream that I was in a car and driving the car was the devil, and he was driving me, and the destination was fame. And that was how the Car Drive EP actually happened. So when I was writing the Car Drive EP, it was like a story of being driven to fame, and like how that felt, and if I wanted that, if I didn't want that, how that would affect me.
When you first started at the age of 12, did you see yourself writing something like Car Drive EP at the age of 17?
Yeah. Like I never thought like my first album, for example, would sound how it sounded, but I knew it would be crazy and I knew it would be weird and I knew I would do it. I've always had the vision. I just didn't always have the skill.
But one thing that separated him from a lot of people early was his ambition. Because even his early material doesn't feel like someone trying to make generic playlist music. It's always felt cinematic, like every project has its own atmosphere. And eventually that experimentation led to one of the most important decisions in his career, forming the Black Dog. In 2021, Genesis Owusu releases his debut studio project, Smiling with No Teeth, and this is where everything clicked. Now on the surface, this album is insanely fun. It's colorful, it's energetic, it's chaotic, but underneath all that, this album is quite dark, because the central metaphor of the album is the Black Dog.
Who is or what is the Black Dog?
Smiling with No Teeth is an album that is kind of split into two, with two, I guess, quote unquote, black dogs inhabiting each half. And the first black dog is representative of depression. The black dog is a euphemism that I think Winston Churchill coined. He used that terminology to describe depression. But also living here in Australia, like I said at the start, it's a very white place. Obviously with that comes, if you're an outsider, it comes with, a lot of racism. Coming from Ghana, or even like seeing indigenous Australians, like people use the term like you black dog, like as a racist term. I guess that terminology kind of covered the two things that I wanted to talk about in the album, which was racism and like depression.
Tracks like Gold Chains, The Other Black Dog, and Don't Need You all explore different forms of pressure and identity. And what makes the album genius is that it balances fun with discomfort. One second you're dancing, the next second he's talking about isolation and internal conflict. That contrast is the entire point of the project, because a lot of people who struggle mentally become very good at hiding it, hence the title, Smiling with No Teeth. By the way, you guys, if you also don't fully understand that, he doesn't actually have no teeth. He does have his teeth. It's a metaphor, guys. It's a fucking metaphor. So yeah, hence the title, Smiling with No Teeth. Looking happy externally while internally falling apart. As Anthony Fantano said, this album is probably the result of Genesis Owusu consuming so many concept albums, but it manifested itself into a great project. And with this album, Genesis Owusu had officially arrived. There is no going back now after speaking to the Black Dog, but success does create pressure.
Like, how do you feel when it comes to being hated on, or being maybe not hated on, but maybe more criticism? Like, let's say, Fantano for the next album coming on May 15th, let's say Fantano makes a review and says, oh, this album felt kind of flat, I didn't really enjoy it, 5 out of 10. Like, would you, tell him, like, fuck you, or would you be like, no, it's cool,
I mean, Fantano personally, because I've been watching Fantano since I was in high school, not gonna lie, it would sting. In general, I make my music for myself. And especially making the kind of music that I'd make, I don't expect everyone to like it or even understand it. I would prefer someone to like really hate it than to be indifferent about it. So yeah, criticism and all of that's fine, that's fair game. As long as people understand my character and my intention, I think that's important to me. Like, I am someone who is loud about the things that I believe in, morally, politically. So as long as people aren't misunderstanding me as a person and like my character and my intentions, then it is what it is. They can love the music, they can hate it. I'm gonna keep doing what I do.
Especially when your debut album is that good, because now people expect you to top it. And this is where artists usually go one of two ways. They either play it safe or they double down on the experimentation. Which one do you think Genesis Owusu picked? I'm not really gonna give you much time to answer that because you already know it's fucking B. Genesis chose chaos. In 2023, he releases Struggler, an album about a roach. You can't make this shit up, man. When you first listen to this album, you realize that this is some funky shit. But the thing is, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that that's the whole point of Genesis Owusu. He's there to be weird. He wants to be weird. But the deeper meaning behind the album is interesting.
In Struggler, you have a song called The Roach, where I don't know if you're trying to say that you feel like a roach, but you're talking about a roach. And I need to ask, what does that exactly mean? And what can it feel like to be a roach? And what does this specific insect mean to you?
We're kind of talking about experimental sounds and, production and exploring new territories in that way and getting freaky in that way. But yeah, I like to get weird in the writing as well and write about shit that I don't think other people have written about, or at least in a way that other people haven't written about it. The whole idea around Struggler, a bit of an existential crisis. Living in the 2020s is so fucking weird. It's a paranoid time, it's a confusing time, it's a time where you can take out your phone and go on TikTok and see people getting bombed. And then in the same sphere, a fucking president of the United States is saying some crazy shit, and then you just have to kind of go through life and fucking go to work, and it's so weird. It's such a weird time to be living. And when you're just consuming all of this information, but you kind of just have to go to your day job and go to school or sit in your office, you can feel quite small and you want to do something, but you don't know how. You feel like the universe is just so big and everything is so much more powerful than you are, and you're this tiny little thing, which is where the roach came from.
I see now, yes.
There was an old myth where the only thing that would survive an atomic war is a cockroach. It's the whole thing is that they're so tough. They're so resilient. That's kind of how I felt that we as humans are as well. Even though this world that we're in is so big and so absurd and so uncontrollable, and we're so small, we live through it every time. We persevere through all the trials and tribulations. Even when something as big as the entire world is our obstacle, we still manage to scurry through. And that's where the concept of the roach came from.
To be honest, when I first heard it, I was like, the roach? What does that mean?
That first reaction is exactly how I want you to feel. I want people to be taken back and be what the fuck is he talking about?
The production on this album becomes even more aggressive, with some punk influence, with some distorted instrumentation, with some explosive performances. This album sounds like resistance, like fighting against a system that tries to define you. But honestly, this is where I think Genesis fully became one of the most unique artists, especially in the Australian scene. Kids thought his name was Coffee. His name is Coffee. He went from that to making 2 unforgettable albums. So one thing that also separates Genesis from a lot of artists is that he actually says what he fully believes. And that matters because a lot of artists avoid political topics completely, especially once money gets involved. So Genesis Owusu has never cared about the public opinion. He's never cared what people say about him. He will always say what's on his mind. He does not care about what brands have to say, about what sponsors have to say, and that's also why he is so heavily respected, especially by his own fan base. But Genesis has been vocal about racism, social inequality, Palestine, and identity. And whether people agree or disagree, you can tell that with Genesis it's coming from a genuine place, not branding. And honestly, that connects back to his music as well, because his entire career is basically about rejecting boxes, rejecting stereotypes, and refusing simplification. He's proof that you don't need to fit one genre. He's proof that you don't need to simplify yourself. And he's also proof that you don't need to become algorithm bait. You can still make deeply creative and weird and emotional art, and people will connect with it as long as it comes from a genuine place, even if it takes time. I asked him what's something about his journey that people don't really understand. He said it's genuinely hard. What he meant by that is that a lot of people just see it as like, oh, you're just rapping your own music or you're just performing your own music. There's no skill to that. But his argument is that no, there is a lot of planning that goes into it. There are a lot of people that are involved. He said that these projects are not cheap to make at all. They are very expensive. They are very time consuming. They take a lot of planning.
When you first started releasing the music, would you say that you expected it to go anywhere, like maybe grow an audience, or did you just kind of release music to test the waters and see what happens? Was it tactical or was it just kind of like weirdly accidental?
It was honestly both. It was completely accidental, but at the same time, if you asked me what I was going to do or what I was going to become when I was younger, when I was 12, when I was earlier than that, I knew I'd be doing some crazy shit. I didn't know what, I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to be doing some crazy shit, some crazy artistic, wild shit.
One final question that I asked: what is it that you want to say to your fans regarding the album? Red Star Wu and the Worldwide Scourge releasing on May 15th. He just said to just be ready and that we're going to see you. And I hope you guys will be there to enjoy the album because it is very exciting. I am very excited.
Is it what you expected, having fame, or is it not what you expect at all? What does it feel like?
That's a good question. First of all, I have definitely gained a fan base of people who really, support me around the world, which is great. But I still wouldn't call myself famous. Like, I'm still pretty underground in the grand scheme of things. I can still go and get my groceries and I'll get recognized. Someone will ask for a photo, but it's not like fucking paparazzi TMZ. I can still go and do it. I think I'm at a pretty good point of fame right now. I can still live comfortably.
So, after researching his story and actually talking to him directly, I think the reason that Genesis Owusu resonates with people is pretty simple. His music feels human. It's messy, it's complicated, it's emotional, it's angry, it's joyful. It's all at once. And in an era where so much music feels so manufactured, I think that's what makes him stand out from the rest. Not only that, but also he takes a lot of different directions. He is very unique, he's weird, but I think that's why his music resonates with a lot of people. So yeah, that was the entire history of Genesis Owusu. Before this video ends, I genuinely just want to say thank you. Not only to Genesis Owusu himself for actually taking the time to sit down and talk with me, but also to the people in the Genesis Owusu Discord server. Because without you guys supporting the idea and encouraging me and Genesis Owusu, helping me reach out, this interview probably would have never happened. And honestly, as someone who started this channel just talking about music I loved, getting the opportunity to actually speak to one of my favorite artists is kind of surreal. So seriously guys, thank you. To Genesis, thank you for being open, thoughtful, and willing to trust some random guy on YouTube with your story. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys have a good day, and that's it.
And, going back to, the Black Dog, you have the intro of your song, Waiting on You, where you say that you see a merchant with a black fur coat and he has dials for sale, smiles for sale.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of is what the album title is kind of alluding to as well, like kind of fake smiles, pretending things are okay when they're not, like smiling with no teeth. It's just putting up a front, like you don't really mean it. And yeah, like the merchant with the black fur coat. He's, yeah, selling smiles, selling the gold and the diamonds and the things that look glamorous on the outside but are kind of vapid and hollow on the inside. Yeah, you're pretty much spot on. Like, yeah, selling things that look good on the outside but don't actually have that much meaning on the inside.